Good morning and welcome Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota and Lakewood Ranch Unitarian Universalists, as well as our visitors. My name is the Reverend Doug Watkins. I'm the interim senior minister here, and we're joined this morning by Reverend Beth Miller and Reverend Budfriend Jones, who will be offering the message this morning. We continue in worship with our prelude with Don Bryn and some announcements. We'll see you back here in a moment. As we continue with worship, we are especially glad that our visitors are joining us this morning. We hope that you'll take a moment while you're on the homepage or visiting the homepage to click on our Welcome Visitors banner. That will take you to a page that gives you some helpful information to get to know us better as a congregation and to know more about Unitarian Universalism. We also hope that while you are there, you will take a moment to sign our virtual guest book. If you do that, we will send you our weekly newsletter entitled The Contact, as well as links to our various Zoom gatherings. And we hope that you'll take an opportunity to visit those as you are able so that you can meet more people in the congregation. You'll also notice that on that homepage there is a donate button with a basket, and if you click on that, you have the opportunity to give in two ways today, actually. First, we have the ongoing work of the congregation, and it is very important now for us to be generous, to continue to support the congregation. But also, you would have the opportunity to click on the Share the Plate section, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We also remind you that after the service, there is a coffee hour, and you can reach that using the same link that is used for the forum. And also, in a few minutes, when we light our chalice here as part of worship, we invite all of you to light a candle, or if you happen to have your own chalice at home, to light that for your worship there where you are. So if you don't have it out, take a moment to do that. Finally, in our announcements, I remind you that today is Share the Plate Sunday. And this month, we are supporting the work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. This committee is a historic part of our tradition that connects us around the world and takes our values out to serve the world. Many of you had the opportunity during the holidays to look at the Guest at Your Table brochure that gave you some stories of the various ways that we connect as Unitarian Universalists. In general, we reach out around the world to grassroots organizations and partner with them to do work that is consistent with our values. We hope that you will take a moment before we move into worship to support the congregation and also to give generously to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Now we continue in the moment with the lighting of the chalice.
Good morning. When Elie Wiesel accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986, he ended his speech with these words: "We know that every moment is a moment of grace, every hour an offering. Not to share them would mean to betray them. Our lives no longer belong to us alone. They belong to all those who need us desperately." And now I invite everyone at home to light your own chalice or candle as I light ours here in the sanctuary. We light this chalice in honor of our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. And now let us join together in singing number 216, Hashivenu.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu.
We now invite you to a time of deepening into worship as we offer a time for centering. We will center in three ways: in word, in quiet, and then in singing together. We begin this morning with our centering in words. Our meditation is inspired by an invocation composed by Patrick Wohan, mayor of College Park, Maryland. We come with hearts deeply thankful for all that we have received. We come from many backgrounds and by many paths. We come inspired by a singular mission: to struggle for the well-being of everyone who inhabits our beloved country. As our newly elected president and vice president assume their responsibilities to lead us, may they bear the responsibility of leadership with integrity. May they be courageous when courage is required and yielding when conscience dictates. May they be wise in humility, generous in their assessment of others, and compassionate in all things. May we see in them a dedication to service, and may they see in us a willingness to give them support. May they stand in solidarity with the needy and the poor. May they lead us to identify and overcome destructive prejudices and help us to unify our country. May they be guided to know and do what is right, challenge those things that diminish justice, and address those things that harm the integrity of life on the planet. May we view this remarkable moment as an invitation to move forward with purpose and intention together, and to join in the work of repairing a broken world. May we become more concerned not with being right, but with lifting the lives of those around us. May our intentions be sincere and our labors selfless. May we walk the walk of compassion and bring compassion to the center of our lives. May we cultivate the ability to see the humanity and honor the dignity of all people, including those with whom we differ. May we live into a purpose larger than ourselves and begin to transcend our self-centered limitations. May we recognize that our lives will be measured not by the titles we carry, but by the hearts we heal. In our toil and labor, may our hearts and our eyes remain open. May we always remember our origins and never neglect those whom we are called to serve. May we remember that all things worthy require effort and sacrifice. May we carry hope within us. In every ending, there's a beginning, and in every memory, a dream ahead. And I add, in this week when we honored and remembered the continuing impact of COVID, that here in our worship, we are aware of its impact both in our country and the world. We remember that there are now over 412,000 who have died of COVID in the United States and over 2 million in the world. Each of them a unique individual connected to hundreds of people. The impacts are staggering. We hold that truth as part of our time together this morning. Will you join me now in some moments of quiet, and then join your voices with us as we sing Spirit of Life.
Our reading this morning is a letter from George Washington to the Toro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island. To the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, gentlemen, while I received with much satisfaction your address replete with expressions of esteem, I rejoice in the opportunity of assuring you that I shall always retain grateful remembrance of the cordial welcome I experienced on my visit to Newport from all classes of citizens. The reflection of the days of difficulty and danger which are past is rendered the more sweet from a consciousness that they are succeeded by days of uncommon prosperity and security. If we have wisdom to make the best use of the advantages with which we are now favored, we cannot fail, under the just administration of good government, to become a great and happy people. The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more than toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. It would be inconsistent with the frankness of my character not to avow that I am pleased with your favorable opinion of my administration and fervent wishes for my felicity. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety underneath his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. May the Father of all mercy scatter light and not darkness upon our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here. Signed, George Washington.
Good morning. Good morning. How to begin a brief meditation on an event that cannot be mediated, the Holocaust. How to remember the Shoah when its searing reality dismembers all pretensions to human civility. How to consign to the abyss of history the infamous words that Jews, Romani, homosexuals, and others first saw when they entered Auschwitz. How to erase these same words from our consciousness when they are reappearing on T-shirts in America and at America's national capital. We are aghast today that there are some who deny the human and moral devastation 3/4 of a century ago. But we are more horrified by others who do remember it, but with demonic commitment to continue its evil work. The Shoah was awesome in its magnitude, awesome in its intentionality, awesome in its depravity, awesome in the resources devoted to such sinister purposes, awesome in the inconsolable sorrow it inflicted on the world. Yet come together we must, at least virtually, to remember, to grieve and to remember with remorse, to remember with commitment, to shout from the rooftops, never again. To heal, we must remember, President Biden said on Tuesday night. It's hard sometimes to remember, he continued, as a man who himself is acquainted with grief. But that's how we heal. Americans remember the horrors of African slavery and Jim Crow and lynchings and their consequences down to this day. We remember the dispossession and the human devastation of whole native populations across the continent. We remember other mass killings and heinous crimes across the planet, and we remember those killings and heinous crimes across our own country. Pulse, Tree of Life, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Mother Emanuel, Las Vegas, Oklahoma City. Too many to name, too much sorrow to bear, too many innocent victims never to forget. Amanda Gorman, the brilliant young poet at President Biden's inauguration, asked, "When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice." Today, we remember the Holocaust. It's not just an unspeakably horrible event in our collective past. It is an unspeakably horrible tendency here and now. Some Americans are reading Mein Kampf. Some carried Nazi flags into our nation's capital. Ken Burns said that we are afflicted with 3 viruses: COVID-19, white supremacy, and misinformation. But fortunately, we have elected a president and vice president who want us to tackle all of these post-haste. Their faith is real, and their life experience prepared them for this moment. President Biden brings head, heart, and hand to his leadership as he seeks to guide us out of this never-ending shade. He speaks of the soul of America. He quotes the Bible in his speeches. But he's not the first president to do that. Scholars tell us that George Washington even had a favorite Bible verse. His verse appeared in 3 separate books in the Hebrew Bible, and he quoted it at least 50 times in his correspondence and many, many more times in his speeches. Do you know what it is? Well, did you attend Hamilton or get to see it? You heard it there. Did you watch the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? You heard it there. It was in the libretto of Lin-Manuel Miranda's very popular musical, and the young poet laureate Amanda Gorman quoted it in her now famous poem, The Hill We Climb. What is that verse? Here it is. "They shall all sit under their own vines and under their own fig trees, and no one shall make them afraid." I wish we had time to explore the rich context in which this text is embedded. Suffice it to say that the vine and the fig tree symbolize safety, security, freedom from want, the relaxed enjoyment of the goodness and the blessings of life. When Washington decided to retire, he used this phrase to describe the life he envisioned for himself at Mount Vernon. Now, I know that referring to historical figures can be a tricky thing these days, on these days of changing values. Washington was a great, but not a perfect, human being. He was a person like us. He had flaws, he had vanities, and sometimes questionable taste. More egregiously, he was a slave owner, and his greed toward the land led the Iroquois to call him Nevertheless, at the very beginning of our republic, and perhaps more than anyone else, George Washington shaped the office to which 232 years later Mr. Biden would be inaugurated. It is important today, especially today, after the January 6th insurrection. It is important today on Holocaust Remembrance Sunday. It is especially important today to also remember that our first president went out of his way to befriend the Jewish community. Jews have borne the brunt of exile, pogroms, and persecutions since almost the beginning of time. But they found a refuge in America. 15 Spanish and Portuguese Jewish families came to what is now Rhode Island in 1658. They formed Congregation Jeshuat Israel. They built and dedicated Toro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island in 1763. In 1790, George Washington, our first president, wrote to the first Jewish community in Newport. He wrote a long, warm, and affirming letter that Beth just read to you. And in this handwritten letter, and in other documents and speeches, he demonstrated his own deep knowledge of the history of the Jewish people. Writing to a Jewish audience, he quoted a Jewish text, which was his favorite text as well. And this text encoded his vision for America. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit safely under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make them afraid. And there shall be none to make them afraid. A message for today. Washington was aware of their long history of being cast out and cast down. He knew of their expulsion from Spain in 1492. He knew of their persecution by Christians from the Middle Ages until the present time. And it is against this global subcurrent of intolerance that he wrote an oft-quoted but visionary sentence that we should remember today. In this most important document, he actually is quoting a Jewish leader of that Jewish community. And the words are these: "For happily, the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance." This is not mere tolerance, he declared. It is full inclusion and full participation under the law. And this is protected by the law. To give to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. These words have been a beacon to guide us down through the centuries. Do they not express the same sentiment to which Amanda Gorham testified last Wednesday? She said, "We seek harm to none and harmony for all." Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew. Even as we hurt, we hoped. Even as we tired, we tried. Yet, sadly, this vision of inclusion and the full participation of all of us in our republic is not shared by everyone. In his last speech before his departure from his office as our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo proclaimed, quote, Multiculturalism is not who America is. It distorts our glorious founding and what this country is all about. Unquote. So says a possible nominee for president in 2024. A few months ago, the New York Times published its 1619 report. This report, for the first time, places the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of our national narrative. But on his last day in office, the Trump administration released its answer to the 1619 report, the much heralded 1776 report on patriotic education. And this is intended to rebut, replace, and undo the New York Times report with, shall we say, a whitewashed version of our history. In 2022, in 2024, Americans will be forced to choose again between these competing visions. Ms. Gorman spoke for me when she said, "We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free." In my lifetime, I have visited villages where Jews were herded into churches and the churches set on fire. I have knelt and wept at Babi Yar, where row after row after row of Jews, Ukrainians, and others, where women and men and children, old and young, strong and frail, were massacred. Of course, none of that happened in America. But in America, as a child, I stood on the slave block in the square of Fredericksburg, Virginia, unaware that human beings were sold on that block like animals and families were sundered forever. And as an adult, I intruded upon the rocky but holy ground of the Black Hills, sacred even now to the Lakota, the Dakota, the Cheyenne, the Omaha, the Arapaho, the Kiowa Apache peoples. And I have wept with a Cherokee friend before the desecration of Stone Mountain in Georgia. Being America is more than a pride we inherit, said Ms. Gorman. It is the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it. The hymn we sang, the first hymn we sang today, Hashavanu, the text of that hymn in Hebrew, you sang it, but it is a direct quotation from the book of Lamentations. It is a plea for help and a prayer of repentance. Turn us back, O God, to you, and we will turn, renew our days as before. For the humanist among us, this God language may require a little tweaking, but after the insurrection at our capital, after the impeachment, after 4 years of deceit and corruption on such a grand scale, and after all that we still are going through, we need to repair the past we have stepped into and return to the fundamental values of truth and decency and mutual respect. In this world of cascading crises, what are we to do? Repair the world is the answer. It's even especially the answer after the Holocaust. Tikkun olam is the great Jewish expression of this vocation. Repair, heal the world. There should be an 11th commandment, Elie Wiesel told a reporter. Thou shalt not hate. And the 12th one too, he said, thou shalt not be indifferent. These two, he said, are the most important subjects in the world. Thou shalt not hate. Thou shalt not be indifferent. History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, wrote the Irish poet Seamus Heaney. But then once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. So hope for a great sea change on the far side of revenge, and believe that a further shore is reachable from here. Believe in miracles. And the hymn we are about to sing, Vine and Fig Tree, also is a Jewish song, also a prayer. It is a prayer for safety and security, a prayer for peace, peace for all, peace above all. It was the prayer of the Prophet Micah. It was the prayer of George Washington. Let it be our prayer today. Before we sing it, allow me to leave you with just a few more words from our young poet laureate. And this will be how we repair the world. One thing is certain, she said, if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. On this Holocaust Remembrance Sunday, we dedicate ourselves to rebuilding a republic that gives to bigotry no sanction and to persecution no assistance. We commit ourselves to bring forth a world where everyone shall sit in safety under their own vine and fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. Please join us now as we sing hymn number 399, Vine and Fig Tree.
And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And every hand into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and honor.
We move now towards the close of our worship service, and as I share the closing words, I invite you to return to your candle or chalice and extinguish it as I extinguish our light here. The opposite of beauty is not ugliness, it's indifference, said Elie Wiesel. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, but indifference between life and death. Action is the only remedy to indifference, the most insidious danger of all. I extinguish this candle, but not our commitment, tikkun olam, go forth to heal the world, act with compassionate hearts. So may it be.